salted caramel, brown butter, Blondie bars, with a pretzel crust. Wow, these were good. This crust is my absolute favorite. I would advise you to double the crust amount. It's great on ice cream, pies, or just on a spoon. This crust covered a sheet pan, a little bigger than my 13 by 9-inch cake pan. In a bowl combine 1 and 1/2 cups crushed pretzels. I used pretzel rods. 1/3 cup white sugar. 6 tablespoons of melted butter. Then 1 heaping teaspoon of a caramel sauce. You are looking for a coarse wet sand texture. If it doesn't hold together, with a slight bit of pressure, add a bit more melted butter or caramel sauce. It also shouldn't fall back into place when separated with a spatula, so you can decide to have a more thin-like bar or a more thicker like brownie depending on how you want it or what pans you have. If going thicker than a sheet pan, add more to your baking time. And try not to eat too much of this crust or make extra. I used a greased sheet pan and spread out and flattened my crust while my oven was preheating to 350. I used my fingertips for most of this to get it in all the corners and edges. Then, so it was packed tightly, I used my fondant smoother and evened everything out. You could wrap something else flat in foil if it's not food safe, like a side to a box or anything you can come up with, and get it good and packed against your pan. I partially bake the crust for 7 minutes. At this point, while your crust is baking, start browning a whole stick of unsalted butter in a pan. You can use salted, but remove the salt from the dry ingredients. This took around 5 minutes on a medium heat. While your butter is browning, get a large bowl, add 3/4 cup of brown sugar, and get your other ingredients ready. The crust is ready. Set that aside. I usually don't like my brown butter very dark. If you are the same, you can just melt the butter or just slightly brown it. You can see here against my spatula how it darkens. Once the butter is a dark amber color, add it to the brown sugar. Let the butter and brown sugar cool a bit before adding the egg. I combined those two and added 1 teaspoon of vanilla, then 1 tablespoon of caramel sauce with sticky ingredients. It helps to grease your measuring spoons or cups. Mix in 1 egg quickly, just in case the butter is hot still. You don't want it to cook or scramble the egg. Then add 1 cup of all-purpose flour, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, or no salt if using salted butter. Mix that just until you see no dry ingredients and almost no lumps. A few are fine. Look at this batter. It looks very yummy. This next part is optional. If you don't want to be scared that you possibly burnt your crust, don't add this dark chocolate syrup. I will show you at the end how it seeped through the crust, and I thought it was burnt, but it was just the chocolate, and it did not taste burnt to any of us, but the visual of it will throw you off for sure. I didn't want the chocolate to mix into the brownie too much, or the crust to come up, so I tried to just let it fall on top of it. Look at those pretty ribbons. If you're up for doing some math, I honestly think I would do a full batch of this batter plus an additional quarter of the batter amount for a pan like this. I know sheet pans can't hold a lot, so it was fine. I just wish the brownie ratio was a little bit more. Or like I said earlier, you could obviously put it in a smaller, deeper pan and just cook the brownie part longer. I just tried to tilt the pan where more batter was needed. There was one area I couldn't get the brownie batter to, so I slightly pushed it with the spatula. For this sheet pan, it took 15 minutes in a 350 oven. If you have any questions on adjusting for your pan or batter amount, leave them in the comments. The brownie didn't sink in at all when I touched it. For a thicker brownie, you could use the toothpick method. You don't want it dripping wet. In the center, just a bit moist is perfect. Right out of the oven, I sprinkled a little bit of salt on top. Let this cool completely before cutting or adding any more toppings, or those toppings will melt or seep into the brownie. I just realized I said brownie this whole video when they are blondies. I'm aware now. After it has cooled, I put more caramel and chocolate, and I had some extra crushed pretzels I sprinkled on top to stick to that chocolate and caramel. That's optional as well. For the first piece, I was cutting it with a butter knife and was thinking, I don't want to scrape up my pan. Let me get the first slice out, and it easily cut with a plastic spatula. I like the sheet pans for when you're wanting smaller portions of sweet things or for bigger family get-togethers. This is something I will make on the 4th of July or birthday parties or any holiday really. Here you can see the zigzag pattern of the chocolate. I don't usually do chocolate on the crust, and you can probably tell how. I easily got scared that it was burnt. So glad it wasn't, and I could barely taste the chocolate at the bottom. So using it as a topping might be the best if you want to add chocolate or chocolate chips on the crust instead of sauce. Please subscribe to my channel, you guys.